I build tree houses. I came about it from my childhood. You know, my brothers and I would climb up into the trees. I grew up in Seattle, and we would look out over the Puget Sound, and that's where I would go to just find mystery, create, you know, scenarios. One day I was a pirate. The other day I was in a spaceship. The first house I'd like to talk about is the third house I did. It's called Casa del Sole a Mezzanotte, which means the house of the sun at midnight. My Italian's horrible, sorry. You can see here, there's the lake, and I always wanted the tree houses to fit in with nature. I build with 100% salvage and reclaimed wood. I will go into the forest, I'll find fallen trees, I'll bring them to the mill, and then I'll have them cut, and then 8 months later, I'll build with them. I just love this lake. There's a little close-up shot. You can see it, how it hopefully is fitting in with nature. This is funny. Uova strapazzate is what the Italians called me, because it means scrambled eggs. Because they just figured I was insane, which is pretty much true. There's the house there and the tree coming down, and you see the stone wall. When I first found this, you know, there's 1,000 acres that I had to walk. They said, oh, go find your tree. And I'm like, okay. So I walked 1,000 acres, and it was a villa and a beautiful vineyard, and it's in Tuscany. And but I realized that the tree itself, its roots were being eroded by the lake. But that was my tree. I had to build in this tree. So what I did in the winter is dove down with little goggles on and, you know, my surf shorts, which also they thought was hilarious, and built a wall 12 feet down into the lake and then another 10 feet up. And so I saved the roots from being eroded, and then I knew I could build this tree house, which I was so happy with. You can see, like, yeah, I was insane, strapazzata. It's like, they weren't wrong there. A much younger me. Up in the tree house, you'll see that there's the copper roof. That's also salvaged copper. So we bought bulk copper that was taken off of churches, and we cut it and we banged it back out and we pieced it together, kind of like doing a quilt, but of copper. Here you'll see across from the lake. This is interesting because I hadn't noticed this until I was looking in my journal. And you'll see how the treehouse is, and then the tree comes down, and then there's the wall, and then there's the mirror reflection. Well, the clients were very, very into yoga, which I am too. And again, they also loved just the ahimsa of my work, meaning non-harming. And so it looks like tree pose to me. And I just saw that like last week, only because I was doing this, you know. And so then the client is Sting and Trudy Styler. I had them dress up like this. I had to, because it was like opening night, and I was into this whole druid folklore, and so they had to, and they were very happy to dress up like that. All the kids did too. It was great. The fun thing, you know, about all the tree houses is that they have stories. And the thing is that each one has its own story. The wood has story. The children have their stories with me. You know, the parents have stories with me. And that all comes together, and then I put that into a journal. And then that's my way of being able to reflect back and go, oh, yeah, that's what happened, you know, because it's easy to forget, you know. So, okay, so we'll move on. Petra Cliff House. This is great because my daughter's name is Petra and my great-grandmother's name is Petra. And it was named by the client. The client is Val Kilmer, very sweet, hilarious person. One of the funniest, well, he is the funniest guy I ever met. Again, when I got there, he left a note. It's in Pecos, New Mexico. And the note said, again, go find your tree. But he has 6,000 acres. I was like, oh my God. So I walked for 6 days. There were, seriously, hawks hovering around me. They were going to kill me. And being a vegetarian, I thought it was funny because then I had a club. I was like, this thing's I'm going to get killed. but whatever. So I didn't, obviously. So you can see how it's resting into the middle of this cliff. And the concept was that possibly the house was maybe from the 1870s, was up on the cliff, and then a storm knocked it over and it got impaled into these trees. And that was my concept. That's what I went with. Here, you'll see the siding. What happened here was once I found the trees in the cliff, and I got my story going, because it always is that, and then I drove around. I was in Pecos, New Mexico, kind of by Santa Fe. And I would drive and drive and drive, and I found a barn. The barn I had to buy. I love this barn. I was like, that's my barn. And so I went to talk to the family, because it was like getting destroyed. It wasn't really a functional barn. And I said, can I buy your barn? They said, no. I was like, So I went back the next day, and I said, can I buy your barn, please, please? They're like, no. And so the third day, I went back with like a 6-pack of beer, and we sat down on their porch, and I talked more. They still said no. By the 7th day, kind of biblical, I didn't think about that either. They said yes. And I was like, oh. They said, but you have to take every single piece of wood and take it out so we can put our trailer there. And I'm like, done, great. So you really can see how the wood is. It's just burnt, you know, it's just amazing. And there were gnarly pieces that the sun must have twisted. It was so much fun to work with. Again, 100% reclaim salvage, you know, so, and that's really, for me, it's like, can you imagine like building a tree house, working with nature, and then contributing somewhere else to some sort of deforestation? Just seems wrong, right? It'd be like buying plastic bottles of water or something like that. It's like, where's that plastic going to go? Probably into the ocean, you know. So everything has to be recyclable. Everything has to be reclaimed. It's really important. It's how we vote is where we spend our money. So I like this image because it's like it shows how the Pecos River is, and so the house itself is 70 feet above water level. So when you're in it, you're just like, wow, you really feel kind of like, I'm way up here. But actually, you have to walk down from the cliff. So everyone smiles. This is totally true because what happened was, in the end, is I brought the family that I bought the barn from, and I brought them to the treehouse. And it's like, here's Val and me and my crew, and here's this family. And they smiled, but like 3 of them started crying because they had no idea that I would take this, you know, structure, reconfigure it, and put it into this cliff. It was amazing. And then we all went back to their house and drank more beer. So, I want to touch on this, and I don't want to fast forward through this. I really want to, you know, explain what's going on here. Is I heard that there were these kids that lived on the streets in Tangier, and they would run along the trucks and try to get themselves under the axles and hide there, and then that truck would get onto the ferry and then go to Spain, right, across the strait. And most of them, I guess, would get hurt a lot, and then they would get into Spain, and then the police would catch them, and then they'd beat the heck out of them and send them back to Tangier. So they tried to build tree houses to get off the street. And I had fallen about 40 feet and thankfully, you know, survived. And when I heard about this story from my friend, I realized, like, I got to go over there. Like, I got to go help these kids learn how to build safely because they built a tree house, but they were up there kind of smoking, if you know what I mean. And and they started a fire and the thing burnt down and they all collapsed out of it. And I was like, oh my gosh, like, okay, one, you know, there's fire hazards there. And so I went over. I called my friend Russell Simmons, I called Sting, I called Donna Karen, and within 2 hours I had 60 grand and I got the guys on a plane and we went over there. And we spent a month doing a treehouse workshop where we taught these kids that were from like the age maybe 8 to 15. They have to leave the orphanage at 16. And so it was just incredible. See, that's the view, like from the treehouse. It's like, it was amazing, and there's Spain, you know? So it's like That's what they want. They want to go find their dad. You know, they want to go to Spain because they think that's the golden land. And I was like, and they're like, we can't get visas. And I was like, well, you don't need a visa to go somewhere in your mind. Like, find your home here in Tangier and, you know, make a life of it. You're like beautiful kids, you know. And 15 out of those 16 kids all are apprenticing carpenters in Tangier now, which is amazing. Being over there, I love the lanterns. So I love those, you know, the Moroccan lanterns that have that copper underneath and the copper above. Well, so I figured out I could build one. And so the idea was, okay, copper below, copper above. That can't be that difficult. A lot of glass. And so the next house that I did was inspired by my experience with those kids and my experience in Tangier and how welcoming they were. It was just, you know, it was after 9/11, and I ate dinner with so many families there. We went to the orphanage, and they put on concerts for us. It was like phenomenal. So yeah, that's another image of it. It's like shows all my weaving of the branches. Again, copper is recycled, again from a church or a synagogue. And there's an internal shot for that glow. It's like during the day it glowed inward, and then at night it glowed outward. So just like a lantern will. Up in here, going through the branches, I like to create these situations where when you're walking up, you have to get a little small. Like in your mind, you got to get back into that childhood thing. So I always create them smaller and smaller and smaller, and then you finally get out there. And then you're up there. So because, I mean, for me, the tree houses are like a porthole. They're a porthole to a memory of your childhood. It's a porthole to reunite you with nature. And also maybe it's about, you know, as an adult, reconnecting with your own child or your grandchild. It's a place where you can meet and have a common ground, even though you're up in the trees. That's funny. There I am. What we're going to do now is just talk a bit about my process. I've always been an artist. I've been an artist since I was a child. I've never not known an artist's life. So these are initial drawings. This is how I start. This won't make sense to you, but what it is, it's two eyes on a waterfall. And I did make that house. It's, you know, and then this is another night of trying to figure it out. This is about, you know, you create the triangle, and the problem is 2/3 solved. Pythagoras said that. I didn't make that up. A lot of what I'm doing is based on my studies, say on Patanjali and the Yoga Sutras, or alchemy, or the Kabbalah. These are probably my three main influences. And so I try to just mix it all together and throw it into a pot and see what comes out. That's a good example of that. That's alchemy. This is a stained glass design based on Druid folklore. And this is like my studies of anatomy. That's how I write. Again, this is Sanskrit here. Over here we have, you know, the cube and the star, which is Kabbalah. And in the end, it is for the children. But again, is it for the children only? No. The adult always says, oh, I want a treehouse for my kid. And I'm like, okay, I've heard this before. Because in the end, the adults move in, the kids are there, they have movie nights, there's a time when they just smoke cigars on the porch, and there's sometimes it's a big picnic, and it's a big sleepover for like all the neighborhood kids. It's, again, it's, you know, maybe you can't get your childhood back, but maybe you can get that sense. You know, that when our imaginations were flowing and we weren't just so locked down with the mundane life, that is what you can get back, and that connection with your family. Thank you.